Arthur Liu spent $1 million on Alysa Liu. She quit figure skating, faced a nightmare, then shocked the entire world. Arthur Liu never imagined that the biggest gamble of his life would have nothing to do with money. People often hear the number first. $1 million. It is a figure that immediately grabs attention. For years, that number followed conversations about his daughter, Alysa Liu. Fans, critics, and media outlets all pointed to the sacrifices made behind the scenes. The private coaching sessions, the travel expenses, the training camps, the endless hours spent chasing a dream that only a tiny percentage of athletes ever achieve. From the outside, it looked like a carefully planned journey toward greatness. Alysa was the child prodigy who seemed destined for stardom. She was winning competitions while many kids her age were still figuring out what hobbies they liked. Every time she stepped onto the ice, expectations grew larger. Every victory created another headline. Every headline created more pressure. Arthur watched it all unfold from a unique position. He was not just a parent cheering from the sidelines. He was the architect of a dream that had consumed years of dedication. He had invested resources, energy, and emotions into helping Alysa become one of the brightest young stars in American figure skating. As Alysa's reputation grew, so did the belief that her future was already written. Commentators discussed Olympic possibilities. Fans debated how many titles she might eventually win. Coaches spoke about her potential with excitement. The skating world seemed convinced that she was only getting started. But there was one thing nobody truly understood. The person carrying all those expectations was still a teenager. Behind the smiles and medals was a young athlete navigating a life unlike almost anyone her age. While classmates worried about exams or weekend plans, Alysa's schedule revolved around training sessions, competitions, travel arrangements, and constant scrutiny. Every performance was analyzed. Every mistake became a talking point. Success can be exciting, can also become exhausting. As the years passed, Alysa continued proving why she was considered special. Her performances showcased athleticism, confidence, and remarkable composure. She accomplished feats that many skaters spend entire careers attempting to achieve. She became one of the most recognizable names in American figure skating. Yet something unusual started happening. The higher she climbed, the more questions emerged about her happiness. Observers occasionally noticed moments where she seemed different from the image people expected. There were hints that the non-stop cycle of competition and pressure might be taking a toll. Of course, most fans ignored those signs. Winning tends to silence concerns. As long as medals keep coming, people assume everything is fine. But life behind the curtain rarely matches public perception. Then came a moment that stunned the skating community. Instead of continuing her rise exactly as everyone predicted, Alysa made a decision that few saw coming. She walked away. For many athletes, retirement happens after years of decline or injury. Alysa's situation was completely different. She was still young. She was still successful. She still had opportunities ahead of her. That is why the announcement felt so shocking. People struggled to understand it. Some assumed she needed a temporary break. Others believed she would return after a short period away from the sport. There were endless theories circulating online. Fans searched for explanations that would make sense of such an unexpected move. But Alysa appeared comfortable with her choice. For the first time in years, she was stepping away from the intense environment that had defined her life. The reaction was immediate. Media coverage exploded. Comment sections filled with debate. Supporters praised her courage while critics questioned whether she was giving up too soon. Throughout all the discussion, one reality remained clear. Alysa was choosing herself over expectations. That decision carried enormous significance because elite sports often reward sacrifice above everything else. Athletes are taught to push harder, train longer, and ignore discomfort. Walking away can feel almost impossible, especially when success seems within reach. Yet Alysa did exactly that. She chose a different path. For a while, it appeared that figure skating belonged entirely in her past. Life moved forward. Fans gradually shifted their attention toward new stars. Competitions continued. New storylines emerged. Meanwhile, Alysa explored what life looked like beyond the rink. For someone who had spent most of her childhood immersed in skating, the transition represented an entirely different world. Suddenly, there were opportunities to experience things many teenagers take for granted. There was freedom from competition schedules, freedom from judging panels, freedom from the constant demand to perform. At least, that was the expectation. Unfortunately, life had another challenge waiting. What happened next would test Alysa in ways no skating competition ever could. The nightmare did not arrive in the form of a difficult jump or disappointing score. It arrived through circumstances that were far more personal. Like many young people entering adulthood, Alysa found herself navigating uncertainty. The structure that had guided her for years was gone. The identity tied to being an elite athlete no longer defined every aspect of her existence. For some individuals, that transition can feel liberating. For others, it can feel deeply unsettling. Athletes often spend years connecting their self-worth to performance. When competition disappears, they are forced to answer a difficult question. Who am I without this? It is a challenge that countless former athletes face. The public rarely sees those struggles because cameras tend to focus on victories rather than personal battles. As Alysa adjusted to her new reality, she encountered moments that were far more complicated than many outsiders realized. The certainty that once existed around her future had vanished. Questions replaced answers, and those questions were not always easy. There were days filled with possibility. There were also days filled with doubt. The transition from prodigy to ordinary young adult proved more complicated than anyone could have predicted. While fans remembered the medals, Alysa was learning how to build an entirely different life. The process was messy, it was uncomfortable, and at times it was frightening. People who knew her journey understood that walking away from a sport was only the beginning. The real challenge involved discovering who she wanted to become next. Many former athletes describe that period as an identity crisis. The routines disappear, the goals disappear, the applause disappears. What remains is a person trying to figure out where they belong. Alysa was no exception. Yet even as she faced uncertainty, something important was happening beneath the surface. She was growing. She was learning. She was gaining perspectives that years of competition had never provided. Those experiences would eventually shape the most surprising chapter of her story. At the time, however, nobody could see where the journey was heading. From the outside, it looked like the fairy tale had ended. The skating sensation had retired. The dream was over. The headlines had moved on. And for many observers, that seemed like the final act. They could not have been more wrong, because the world was about to discover that Alysa Liu's story was far from finished. Instead of ending with retirement, it was preparing for a comeback that would leave fans, critics, and even longtime supporters completely stunned. What nobody realized was that the young athlete who stepped away from figure skating was not the same person who would eventually return. The next chapter would involve challenges, growth, resilience, and a transformation that few could have imagined. And when the moment finally arrived, it would become one of the most remarkable surprises in modern figure skating. For a long time, Alysa Liu seemed content staying away from the spotlight. While the skating world continued moving forward, she was experiencing something she had rarely enjoyed during her years as an elite athlete: normal life. That word may sound simple, but for someone who had spent most of her childhood under intense scrutiny, normality was anything but ordinary. There were no judges waiting to score every movement. There were no early morning training sessions demanding perfection. There were no reporters asking about future championships or Olympic expectations. Instead, there was space. Space to think. Space to breathe. Space to discover who she was outside the identity that had followed her for so many years. For the first time in a very long time, Alysa wasn't focused on being a champion. She was focused on being herself. And that adjustment changed everything. People often assume athletes dream only about winning. What many fail to understand is that elite competition can become all-consuming. It influences friendships, schedules, priorities, and even personal identity. When an athlete steps away, they don't simply leave a sport. They leave an entire way of life. At first, that freedom can feel exciting. Then reality arrives. Without competitions to prepare for, goals become less obvious. Without a strict schedule, days begin to look different. The routines that once provided certainty disappear. Many former athletes describe this period as disorienting. Alysa was entering that exact phase. Some days were filled with excitement about new possibilities. Other days brought uncertainty. Questions lingered in the background. Had she made the right decision? Was her skating career truly over? Would she ever miss the adrenaline of competition? Nobody knew the answers, not even Alysa. Meanwhile, public curiosity never disappeared. Every few months, speculation resurfaced. Fans wondered whether she might eventually return. Commentators debated what could have been if she had continued competing. Social media discussions often treated her retirement like a mystery waiting to be solved. Yet Alysa remained largely focused on living her life rather than answering those questions. The more distance she created from skating, the more she experienced things that had once seemed impossible. She spent time with friends. She explored new interests. She enjoyed the kind of flexibility that elite athletes rarely possess. For many people, these moments might seem ordinary. For Alysa, they represented something valuable. Choice. For years, nearly every aspect of her life had revolved around training. Now she could decide how to spend her time without considering competition schedules. That freedom became a powerful teacher. It helped her understand herself in ways that years of skating never could. But life rarely follows a straight path. And while Alysa was learning about the world outside competition, she was also confronting challenges that many young adults face during major transitions. There were moments of uncertainty, moments of doubt, moments where the future felt unclear. Those struggles weren't visible to millions of fans. They happened quietly, away from cameras, away from headlines, away from the public image people associated with her. This was the nightmare few outsiders understood. Not a dramatic scandal, not a shocking controversy, but the difficult emotional process of rebuilding an identity after leaving behind something that had defined nearly her entire life. For someone who had achieved extraordinary success at such a young age, that challenge was enormous. Many athletes spend decades preparing for retirement. Alysa faced it while still incredibly young. The transition required resilience. It required patience. Most importantly, it required honesty. She had to confront difficult truths about what she wanted from life. And somewhere during that process, something unexpected began happening. The pressure that once surrounded skating started fading. The expectations that had followed her for years grew quieter. The constant demands disappeared. As they did, Alysa's relationship with the sport slowly began changing. For years, skating had been connected to responsibility. Training, performance, results. Now, with those pressures removed, she could view it differently. Instead of seeing skating as an obligation, she could remember why she loved it in the first place. That shift may sound small. In reality, it was transformative. Passion often gets buried beneath expectations. When the expectations vanish, passion sometimes returns. Nobody recognized it at the time, but a subtle transformation was taking place. The young athlete who had walked away exhausted was gradually reconnecting with parts of herself she thought she had left behind. The process wasn't dramatic. There was no grand announcement, no headline declaring a comeback, just quiet personal growth. Day by day, month by month. Slowly, the possibility of skating again became less impossible. Still, most people assumed retirement was permanent. Why wouldn't they? Athletes who leave successful careers rarely return at the highest level. The odds are simply too difficult. Time away creates disadvantages. Competitors continue improving. The physical demands remain relentless. Returning requires extraordinary commitment. For someone who had intentionally stepped away from the sport, the challenge seemed even greater. Yet life has a funny way of surprising people. The further Alysa moved from her old career, the more she began understanding what it truly meant to her. She was no longer skating because others expected greatness. She was rediscovering what skating meant on her own terms. That distinction changed everything. Because motivation built on external pressure can eventually collapse. Motivation built on genuine love often endures. As months turned into years, conversations about a possible return grew louder. Some fans dismissed the idea. Others quietly hoped. Many remained skeptical. After all, elite sports history is filled with comeback stories that never fully materialized. Dreaming about a return is one thing. Actually competing again is another. The gap between those realities can be enormous. Meanwhile, Arthur Liu watched the situation unfold. The father who had sacrificed so much for his daughter's skating journey understood better than anyone how difficult the road would be. He had witnessed the triumphs. He had witnessed the sacrifices. He had witnessed the struggles that existed beyond public view. More importantly, he understood that any future decision needed to belong entirely to Alysa. Not to fans, not to commentators, not to expectations, to her. That realization represented one of the biggest changes in their story. Years earlier, the focus had been achieving ambitious goals. Now the focus was happiness, personal fulfillment, freedom. Ironically, removing pressure created the conditions for something remarkable. Alysa wasn't chasing a comeback because she needed validation. She wasn't trying to prove critics wrong. She wasn't attempting to relive old glory. She was simply rediscovering something she genuinely loved. And that made all the difference. The skating world remained largely unaware of how much had changed internally. People continued viewing her through the lens of her earlier achievements. The teenage prodigy, the champion, the retired star. Few realized that Alysa herself had evolved far beyond those labels. She was becoming stronger, more mature, more confident in who she was. That growth would soon face its ultimate test. Because eventually, the possibility of returning stopped being hypothetical. The conversations became more serious. The idea transformed into a genuine consideration. Suddenly, the question wasn't whether people wanted to see Alysa skate again. The question was whether she wanted it enough to undertake one of the hardest challenges in sports. Coming back after years away, competing against athletes who had never stopped training. Re-entering an environment she had intentionally left behind. The risks were obvious. Failure would be public. Criticism would be inevitable. Expectations would return. Many people in her position would choose the safer path. Stay retired. Protect the legacy. Avoid the uncertainty. Alysa faced a different choice. She could remain comfortable, or she could embrace the unknown. What happened next would shock nearly everyone. Because when the young woman who once walked away finally made her decision, it set the stage for one of the most surprising turnarounds in modern figure skating. The same world that believed her story was finished was about to witness something extraordinary. And when Alysa finally stepped back into competition, the outcome would exceed even the most optimistic expectations. When Alysa Liu finally decided to return to competitive figure skating, many people struggled to believe it. The announcement alone generated enormous attention. After all, this wasn't a skater coming back after a short break. This was someone who had walked away from the sport while still at the top of her game. She had spent years away from the competitive spotlight. In elite athletics, that kind of absence often becomes permanent. Most athletes never come back, and those who do often discover that the sport has moved on without them. The competition becomes faster. The standards become higher. The margin for error becomes smaller. That reality is why so many observers greeted Alysa's return with caution. Some fans were excited. Others were skeptical. Many wondered whether she could realistically compete against athletes who had spent years continuing to train at the highest level. The doubts weren't personal. They were practical. Figure skating is one of the most demanding sports in the world. Success requires precision, strength, timing, confidence, and relentless practice. Even a small interruption can affect performance. A multi-year retirement? That seemed like an impossible obstacle. But Alysa wasn't approaching the comeback the way people expected. Years earlier, she had skated with the weight of expectations on her shoulders. Now she was skating for a completely different reason. She wanted to be there. That simple difference changed everything. The pressure that once consumed her no longer held the same power. The expectations that had once defined her career no longer controlled her decisions. She had already walked away once. She knew life existed beyond medals and rankings. That perspective gave her something many competitors struggle to find: freedom. Instead of fearing failure, she embraced the opportunity. Instead of worrying about public opinion, she focused on enjoying the process. And as training intensified, something remarkable became apparent. The talent had never disappeared. The skill was still there. The competitive instincts were still there. Perhaps most importantly, the joy was back. People around the skating community began noticing it. There was a different energy, a different confidence, a different maturity. The teenager who had once carried the expectations of an entire sport was gone. In her place stood a young woman who understood herself far better than before. As competitions approached, excitement continued growing. Fans wanted to know whether the comeback could actually work. Experts debated her chances. Predictions flooded social media. Some believed she could be competitive. Others argued that too much time had passed. Nobody truly knew what would happen. That uncertainty made the story even more fascinating. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Alysa stepped back onto the competitive ice. The spotlight returned. The cameras returned. The attention returned. But something felt different. She wasn't skating like someone burdened by pressure. She looked like someone who genuinely loved being there. Every performance carried an energy that audiences could feel. The comeback wasn't simply about technical elements. It wasn't simply about scores. It was about resilience, about rediscovering passion, about proving that a person's story doesn't have to follow the path others expect. As the season unfolded, Alysa exceeded expectations. Then she exceeded them again and again. The same people who doubted whether she could compete were suddenly discussing something far more surprising. Could she actually win? The question seemed unbelievable considering where the journey had started. Just a few years earlier, many assumed her skating career had ended forever. Now she was forcing the entire sport to reconsider what was possible. Each performance added momentum. Each competition built confidence. Each success created new headlines. Fans who had followed her career from the beginning watched in amazement. New supporters discovered her story for the first time. The comeback was becoming one of the biggest stories in figure skating. Yet the most incredible moment was still ahead. When Alysa reached the sport's biggest stages, expectations once again surrounded her. But this time they felt different. Before, expectations had been a burden. Now they were simply evidence of how far she had come. The pressure no longer controlled her. The fear no longer defined her. She had already faced something harder than competition. She had faced uncertainty. She had faced walking away from everything familiar. She had faced rebuilding her identity from the ground up. Compared to those challenges, performing on the ice felt different. She was no longer skating to prove her worth. She already knew her worth. That mindset became one of her greatest strengths. As major events unfolded, Alysa continued delivering performances that captured attention across the skating world. The comeback story transformed into something much bigger. It became a symbol, a reminder that success isn't always linear, a reminder that stepping away doesn't necessarily mean giving up, a reminder that growth sometimes requires distance. For Alysa Liu, watching these moments unfold carried a special significance. Years earlier, people focused on the money, the sacrifices, the investment, the million-dollar figure attached to his daughter's journey. But standing there now, those numbers seemed almost irrelevant. Because the greatest return on investment wasn't measured in trophies. It wasn't measured in rankings. It wasn't measured in headlines. It was measured in seeing Alysa happy, seeing her confident, seeing her compete because she wanted to, not because she felt obligated. That transformation was worth more than any championship. The father who had invested so much into helping his daughter chase a dream was witnessing something even more meaningful. He was watching her define success on her own terms, and the world was watching too. The comeback continued gaining momentum. Media outlets highlighted her remarkable journey. Fans celebrated every achievement. Commentators praised the maturity she displayed both on and off the ice. The athlete many people thought was finished had become one of the sport's most inspiring stories. Then came the moment that truly stunned everyone. The moment that completed the transformation. The moment that justified every headline describing her return as unbelievable. Alysa didn't simply come back. She came back and proved she still belonged among the very best. The achievement shocked critics. It amazed supporters. It became one of those rare sports stories that feels almost too dramatic to be real. A young prodigy rises to stardom. She walks away unexpectedly. She faces uncertainty and personal struggles. She disappears from the competitive spotlight. Years later, she returns and shocks the world. If someone had written the story as a movie script, many people would have called it unrealistic. Yet it happened. And that's what makes the journey so powerful. Because the most important lesson isn't about skating. It's about resilience. Life doesn't always move in a straight line. Sometimes people need to step away. Sometimes they need time to rediscover themselves. Sometimes the ending everyone expects turns out to be the beginning of something even greater. Alysa Liu's story proves exactly that. The young athlete who once seemed trapped beneath impossible expectations found the courage to walk away. The young woman who faced uncertainty found the strength to rebuild. And the competitor who many assumed was finished delivered one of the most remarkable comebacks the sport has seen in years. As for Alysa Liu, the man who spent years investing time, energy, and resources into helping his daughter pursue greatness, he ultimately witnessed something more valuable than medals. He witnessed fulfillment. He witnessed growth. He witnessed a journey that went far beyond figure skating. And in the end, that's why this story resonates with so many people. Because it isn't just about a champion returning to competition. It's about a person finding her way back to something she loves. Against the odds. Against expectations. Against the assumptions of an entire world. And when she finally returned, she didn't merely surprise a few critics. She shocked the entire world.